What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the Game Awards yet again. And look, I've been doing a lot of predictions. In fact, actually, what started this entire thing was me predicting the winners of almost every category in the Game Awards. Now, I mentioned in that video a couple problems I have with the setup, and I wanted to do just one of those videos, maybe a little bit separated from games itself, but to talk about the Game Awards and to talk about a couple ways that the thing can improve. And look, in all honesty, I come at this from a couple different angles of kind of knowing a certain thing. So look, I know that people watch the Game Awards for the announcements. I think, yes, there are some that watch it for the awards. Yes, the awards do have at least a little meaning. They tend to have meaning with the committee and with the developers. And look, that's not to say that that's like an evil thing. These are the people that are making the games. Can they pat themselves on the back? Sure. Ultimately, I think most of these hundreds of millions of people that watch it do not care what wins best indie, do not care what wins best soundtrack. It doesn't mean they have no value. It just, again, that's like an angle that I know that. I know why people watch these shows, right? Or at least I think I know. I also know that in general, and kind of tied to what I just said, it's maybe not a big deal. Even though the two things I'm about to mention are not the biggest things in the world. They're not going to make the biggest change. As long as he keeps revealing the Witcher 4s and the Mass Effects and the whatevers, those games are going to carry it, and games are going to win Game of the Year, and people are going to have their fights on social media, and the world's going to be a fine place, right? That's what's going to continue happening. I have two suggestions, one of which I actually think is kind of fun and actually a selfish plug for me and my channel, and the other one is a little bit more of like a testy thing that I have gotten, I think, maybe legit mad about before. Let's start with that, the more fiery topic. It's an easy ask, okay? All I'm asking is that you remove the idea that a game that came out last year can be nominated this year. I get it. I get the cutoffs. I said that, in the predictions video. I understand. You got to put out a show, right? Now, I would argue you could move the show to January. I really would argue that. Now, maybe December with ads, or there's like a business side to it, or there's a viewership metric where more people would be able to watch it in early December versus early January. I don't know. But I am sure it's incredibly successful. And he's a smart guy, and there's a smart team around Jeff Keighley, right? I'm sure they have the reasons, okay? Again, kind of an angle of like, does it really matter, right? Who really cares? Okay, I get that. You have to have a show. If you're going to have a show and you're going to make this rule where there's a cutoff date, right? So like there is a cutoff. It's normally late November. If your game comes out a little bit after that, your game is not included in the lineup, right? So games like Marvel Cosmic Invasion, games like Metroid Prime 4, right? These are not games that will count. The thing is, I would stop right there, because what I just said is all you need to say. If you're going to force the awards to be out at a certain time, if you're going to force a deadline for when a game needs to release, then there is a sad reality to me where you don't allow the game to be included in the next year's. And maybe it's something wrong with me, okay, mentally, an instability up there. Maybe it is. But when a game comes out in 2024, it should not be nominated for 2025. If a game comes out in 2025, it should not be nominated for 2026. I just hate the idea that the games would then get in their own way. And maybe I put too much stock on like the labels, but when I hear 2025 Game Awards or Game Awards 2025, I don't want to see. And here's the deal. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, right? That's a phenomenal game. I think I said it was my 5th favorite game last year. You can go back. I think I did a ranking video. It was in my top 5. It is a legendary game, okay? It's really good. I don't want to see it nominated for anything because it didn't come out in 2025. It came out in 24. And yeah, I understand it got cut off from 24. You know what? The unfair reality that your game can't be included in that year because there's a cutoff date, let's extend that unfair reality and say, guess what? Your game doesn't count, period. And you know what? Maybe that would enact change, because say GTA comes out next year, like December 5th, and it doesn't count. Do you know how upset the entire world would be if GTA could not count for 2027, right? I think, you know what that would do, though? It would actually make it so they have to move the Game Awards, or they have to eliminate this cutoff date, and they'd have to say, all right, maybe we'll do the Game Awards the second week of January, so any game that comes out in December can be included. That's what I want. That's what I want, is simply move the Game Awards so you can include everything that came out that year. or you simply eliminate that game and that game cannot count for the following year. It's just, to me, it's insulting that Indy, even though I love it, even though it's one of my favorite games of last year, it's insulting to me that Indy, or I think didn't Troy Baker, isn't that a nominee for like best voice acting? It's like he voiced Higgs in this year's game of Death Stranding 2. Troy Baker literally voiced a character that is worthy enough to get a nomination, by the way, in the year we are currently in and we're nominating games from. And yet you put his work as Indy as part of that. To me, that's insulting. That's insulting to not just himself, because he did another character this year that was pretty darn good. What about all the games that came out this year where a person just deserved a nominee and you have to give it to Troy for last year for a last year game? I feel like I would be insulted if I was the voice actor. But again, that's why it's my video. Maybe they're not insulted. Maybe I'm overreacting. Again, maybe is it a big deal? Probably not, but let's move on. Okay, so that's number one. Second one is more fun, and this is a selfish plug. So at the end of the year, each of the last 2 years, and then now this year is going to be year 3, I do my own. I do my own Game Awards. I'm very proud of it. I'm actually working on it right now, this year's Game Awards. It's going to be super awesome. Honestly, last year's Game Awards was one of the coolest things I think I've ever done on the channel. I highly recommend you watch it, and I highly recommend you come back for mine. So what I do, and this was my idea, I made this idea a couple of years ago, you do best cast. Not necessarily in place of best performance, but you could do it both. And where I come from with that is because that's another issue I think I do have with the Game Awards. Well, actually, they both stem, yes, from issues I have with the Game Awards. So you look at best performance, right? So I mentioned the Troy thing. That aside, you have 3 characters that come from the same game. I think there should be some sort of rule there. And then you could say, well, Alex, maybe that's not fair because maybe, say, some game just has legendary performers and say a game has 3 or 2 or whatever, performances, you want to have those be nominated. So my suggestion is just do best cast. So I do best cast. I think best cast is honestly a more respectful award than best performance, because best performance is focusing on one individual versus, and look, here's the thing. Sometimes maybe there's a game that just has one amazing person and the rest of the characters aren't that good, or one character just freaking blows it out of the water and you say that deserves a spot. That can happen. And you know what? That's kind of why it's there. That's why that category exists. So, I'm for it. You can do it. But I think the idea of saying, okay, well, let's look at a game and let's say who has the best cast. And because, by the way, when you do that, or at least this is how I think about it when I do it in my own Game Awards, you're complimenting the writing because you're saying the writers wrote not just one good character, but they wrote like 5, right? So you're complimenting the writing. You're complimenting multiple characters, their arcs, their stories, whatever. You're also complimenting all of the actors that kind of contributed to the game being so good. Now, are there less of them? I think it depends on the year. To be honest with you, this is not one of those years. This is a year, I'll do it right now, and I'm going to have my own. This is not for sure my nominations for my category, but let's just do a quick rapid fire. I think something like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has a well-rounded cast. I think something like Death Stranding 2 has an incredible cast. I think something like Dispatch has a phenomenal cast. I think something like Mafia: The Old Country. See how easy it is actually when you do it like that? Oh, Expedition, the one that has 3 characters, in best performance. If you were to do a best cast in this year, you actually have a really good competition, and you have games that have good characters 1 through 4, 1 through 3, 1 through 5. There's some games that have like 10 amazing characters. What, are you going to give all of them best performance, nominations? No. Maybe you pick 1 and you limit that category to 1 per game, and then you do a best cast and you give it to, you know what I mean? And that's how I do it. That's how I try to do it. I don't have any like super strict rules for mine, but what I try to do is I try to pick 1 per game, maybe 2, and that's only if they really blow me away, but 1 per game, and then I'll get back to them with the best cast, because if I miss 2 of the 3 Expedition characters, they'll come back because it's an incredible cast. And by the way, in best cast, you can celebrate more than just the 3 of them, right? The 3 that we have here of Gustav, Mael, and Verso. You can have everybody be included into it, right? That's how I think it should be. That I think is more fair. That I think if you add a best cast category, you can keep the performance. And again, you can use the performance for the ways that I just described it, and you can do both. You don't have to eliminate. I think I do both. You don't have to like eliminate one one for the other. I do think best cast is a better category in my personal opinion, but I also think like you could have both because yeah, is there like the absolute best character of the entire year? Is there a performance that's just legendary that you want to like etch in history? Yeah, that absolutely can happen. You could probably make an argument for this year for a couple of them. But there's also, I think I just listed off 5 really quickly. You could probably come up with maybe 7 to 10 games that have all-star casts just that came out this year. And I mean, like historically wise, there'd be so many of them, that did really well. So I think that's more fun. Personally, I think that's more fun, and it's a bigger range, and you're celebrating more than just one person. You're celebrating all the characters, all the voice actors, the writers who wrote those characters. Get this video, Jeff Keighley. But no, in all reality, it's kind of just a venting session. Look, I'll have my own Game Awards if you guys want to check it out. I'll have a lot of promotion material for it as the next couple weeks go, but it's going to be a real fun time, I promise you. Let me know what you think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.